Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lena Bartolsson, and it is a true pleasure for me to welcome you all to this afternoon's seminar. This weekend, the U.S. Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus, arrived in Sweden, and we are delighted to have the opportunity to meet with him today to discuss regional security, a hot topic indeed these days, and learn more about the U.S. defense strategy. Försvar organizes this seminar with the support of the American Embassy, and a special thanks goes to Ambassador Mark Krasinski and Defense Attaché Chris Lütke. Secretary Mabus has long been in public service. He was elected as a state auditor of Mississippi in 1984 and was elected as governor of Mississippi in 1988. In 1994, he was appointed by President Clinton to the post of ambassador to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And in 2009, he was sworn in as the 75th Secretary of the Navy, with responsibility for the Navy and Marine Corps. Approximately 900,000 personnel, 288 ships, and 3,800 aircraft. As Secretary, he has made energy reform and acquisition excellence key issues of focus for the Navy and Marine Corps. He has committed the Department of the Navy to power half of its requirements afloat and ashore from alternative energy by 2020. We are honored to have Secretary Mabus here with us today, and he will elaborate on today's global challenges and the U.S. defense strategy for about 20-25 minutes. And after that, we will have some time for questions and comments. The Secretary has a tight schedule, and due to other commitments, he will have to leave at around 1:45. So I would like to encourage you all to be prepared with your questions and also to keep them short. Thank you, and now I leave the floor to you, Mr. Secretary.
Lena Bartolsson, thank you so much for that introduction, and to our excellent ambassador, Mark Krasinski. And thank you all for being here. I've had a wonderful visit, much too short, to Sweden. I've been to Karlskrona and now to here to Stockholm. And I'm very glad to be here for many reasons, most especially which our two countries share rich maritime traditions and a close relationship between our two nations and our two navies. Depending on your point of view, we are either burdened or blessed to live in very interesting times. We face some serious challenges, but we also have some significant opportunities. So it's important that together we focus on being strategic and smart. As Lena said, I have the honor of serving as the head of both the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps. And I admit that I have a very specific viewpoint when it comes to global security. But I believe that almost any objective view recognizes that many, if not most, of our challenges and opportunities clearly involve the maritime realm. In thinking about those maritime dimensions of security, I'm always reminded about what the head of one of our international Navy partners said. He said the difference between soldiers and sailors is that soldiers look at maps. They look down at the ground. They are attuned to boundaries, to limits, whether man-made or natural. But sailors look to the open sea. They see no limits. They see no boundaries. They see only the far horizon. And over that horizon, today travels the world's commerce. We live in the most globalized economy in history. Today, more than 90% of all world trade moves by sea, and more than half of the world oil shipments also. 95% of international data, phone calls, internet, go under the sea. 80% of the world's population lives within 60 kilometers of the sea. And here in Europe, 90% of your external trade goes by sea and 40% of your internal trade by water. So clearly, freedom of the seas, freedom of navigation, security at sea is a strategic and a vital interest to everything. And there's no questioning the direct link between global economic growth since the end of World War II and maritime security that's been maintained by the United States and by our European and other international partners. Sweden's participation in things like Operation Atalanta, a part of a multinational task force to combat piracy off the Horn of Africa, is just one good example of this. And unfortunately, modern piracy is only one of the increased risks from globalization, maritime terrorism, illegal movement of drugs and weapons and people. Things like this are on the rise today. These challenges of maritime crime and the threats from both state-based and non-state-based actors are complex, dynamic, and intertwined. In dealing with these issues, what naval forces uniquely provide in military terms is presence. Being at the right place, not just at the right time, but all the time. Presence means being there to deal with whatever crisis, whatever situations, whatever threats, whatever challenges we may face. Presence helps deter potential conflict, and it avoids escalating the situation when tensions rise. Naval presence, because we come from the sea, does not infringe upon anyone's sovereign territory. And naval presence is persistent. We can stay for a very long time. And so what presence gives leaders is options. Options ranging from supporting diplomacy to providing much stronger measures. Now, our maritime tradition in America is rooted, like our political and economic ones, largely in Europe. Your sailors began exploring the oceans more than 2 millennia ago. The golden age of Athens, birthplace of democracy, was marked by the rise and success of its navy. It wasn't a coincidence. Athenian fleets were based on ships that depended on the skill and the intelligence of the steersman and the oarsman, and not just on brute force. Those skills were a product of the commitment and cooperation of free people who in times of crisis were expected to board the triremes as rowers. Having helped defend Athens, those same free people, when they returned home, expected to and did begin to play an increasing role in Athenian politics. It marked the first time that self-determination was not solely the domain of those in the higher economic or higher social status. And this maritime tradition has continued throughout the history of Europe, and Sweden's forces have been a part of it. As countries in Europe have launched fleet after fleet toward that far horizon, from the harbors in the Arctic Circle, through the Straits of Gibraltar, around the Mediterranean, to the Black Sea. Steeped in that history, from the earliest days of our republic, our founders saw the need for a navy. In fact, it is enshrined in our Constitution that Congress shall maintain a navy. Now, it's true that our defense strategy today calls for a new focus on the Western Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and the Arabian Gulf. But that same strategy also calls for renewing our partnerships around the world and our commitment to Europe. Just last week, President Obama announced a new initiative to bolster our military presence and security here in Europe. This will mean more pre-positioned equipment to respond to crises, more exercises, increased interactions with our partners. Now, we're taking these steps not as a threat to anyone, but to defend the security and democracy of ourselves and our friends. The bonds between America and Europe, our common heritage and our shared values remain as strong today as they ever have been. The world is safer, the world is more secure, the world is more successful when the United States and Europe stand together. And when we stand with those who, like us, seek to advance the cause of freedom and mutual respect. An American president once famously said that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. That's also the primary mission of naval assets. In peacetime and in wartime, we stand the watch. In peacetime and in wartime, we deploy. There are no permanent homecomings for sailors or Marines. When sailors and Marines are doing their jobs, they are usually a long way from home. And that's how we and our international partners maintain the presence necessary to keep global stability and secure the sea lanes. I try to organize my thinking and the way we approach the Navy as 4 components to get that presence: people, platforms, power, and partnerships. And I'm going to talk for a minute about each one. The Athenian experience that I talked about explains why it's people that are the most important asset that a Navy or any other organization has to the success of anything we undertake. We have the most technological, no matter how good our systems are, no matter how cyber they don't do when our ships, our Marines exercise with our European partners, international partners, it's a connection between our people. It's going to be important for future ability to operate together. It's one of the reasons we conduct so many exchange programs with the nations of Europe. And these exchanges go both ways. The officers from Europe coming to our schools, and in return, ours going to theirs. And even before they become officers. For example, we send midshipmen from the United States Naval Academy to the University in Uppsala here. To work together in any capacity, in any operation, particularly in the military, we have to learn together. And in today's complex, highly technical world, people matter. Second is platforms. As I said, we have the most advanced platforms in the world. America does, and our European friends and allies do. Yet the reality is that quantity becomes a quality all its own. Maintaining presence, being there, requires ships. That's why building up our fleet has been a focus of mine during my 5 years as Secretary. Our ability to do things like humanitarian aid to places as far away as Haiti and the Philippines, to combat piracy off the coast of Africa, and to meet any crisis, regardless of where it pops up, depends on having the platforms and the right platforms with the capability on hand to execute those missions. Now, like most countries, America is and should be taking a much closer and more stringent look at our budget. The American people have the right to expect that coming out of 2 wars, our defense spending is going to go down. But a tighter defense budget, just like a tighter security budget, doesn't and shouldn't mean a weaker defense. Even with fewer dollars, we are building many, many more ships because we've changed the way we do business. In the 5 years before I became Secretary, the U.S. Navy put 27 ships under contract. In the 5 years I've been Secretary, we have put 70 ships under contract with a smaller top line. We've been pretty tough negotiators, and we've increased competition. And in doing so, I think we're keeping our commitments to Europe and around the globe. But to be effective together, all nations and all people that seek freedom and security have to carry their own share of that responsibility. That includes the right platforms, the assets that are required to maintain that presence and that deterrence. So in today's complex world, platforms matter. Now, it should come as no surprise that as Secretary of the Navy, I'm concerned about power, energy. We said, we've got a goal, and we're going to meet it, that by no later than 2020, at least half of all our energy, both afloat and ashore, will come from non-fossil fuel sources. Being present requires energy to get there and to stay there. And the Navy has always coal. We went from coal to oil. The American Navy pioneered the use of nuclear as a way to power ships. And every single time we changed energy, everyone, there were naysayers that said, you're trading one very secure source of energy for something else that is not as known or as secure. And it's almost always more costly. In fact, in the case of wind, it was free. We traded that for coal. When we traded coal for oil, the complaint was you've got these coaling stations all around the world. You're just going to abandon those to go with some new form of energy. In the case of nuclear, it's too dangerous and you can never make it small enough to put on a submarine. Every single time, those naysayers, every time, have been wrong. They've been on the wrong side of history. And they're going to be wrong again. Because finding and using new sources of energy and new fuels and increasing the efficiency in the things we already have is an operational, it's also a strategic issue. Oil is a global commodity. Its price is set globally, even if you can produce all the oil that you need. Anytime there's a crisis, oil traders put something called a security premium in. So when a crisis happens anywhere in the world, the price of oil spikes. And in Navy, in the last few years, I've had unbudgeted fuel price increases of over $2 billion. Even in the Pentagon, finding $2 billion that's not budgeted for can be a challenge. We don't have many places to go get that kind of money. And the only two places we have are training, operations, exercises, or if the bill gets too big, fewer platforms. And neither one of those seems to be a good idea. And it's a strategic issue because energy can and is used as a weapon. And it's a weapon that we don't want used against us or our friends or our allies. Our Secretary of State, John Kerry, says that it's in the interest of all of us to be able to have adequate energy supplies critical to our economies, critical to our security, critical to the prosperity of our people. And we cannot allow it to be used as a political weapon. Working with our foreign partners and our foreign militaries are a big part of our effort. Earlier this spring, I signed an agreement to cooperate with the Italian Navy on biofuel development, very similar to the one signed with the Australian Navy in 2012. We signed that agreement with the Australian Navy on board the USS Nimitz, an aircraft carrier participating in the largest maritime exercise in the world, Rim of the Pacific, RIMPAC, off the coast of Hawaii. It was a carrier strike group. The carrier is nuclear, but all the ships around it and all the aircraft flying off of that carrier were fueled with a 50-50 blend of oil and either biodiesel or aviation biofuels. The Australian Vice Chief of Navy came over on an Australian helicopter and landed on the Nimitz to sign the agreement. And he was asked by the press how committed to the agreement he and Australia were. He said, well, I'm about to get back on that helicopter that's just been refueled with biofuels. So I would say I'm pretty committed to this entire process. And we're collaborating with Sweden on the use of Swedish biofuels because the engines used in the Swedish Gripen and the engine used in our FA-18 that we fly are exactly the same. Sweden has an important place in the world's alternative energy market, and your contribution to this great security challenge are vital. Energy and fuel is a risk that we can address through greater cooperation and sharing the ways to diversify our energy sources. And so, power, energy matters. And the final priority, and a critical one, because it increases the reach and effectiveness of the others, is our partnerships. The idea is that none of us, no matter how big, no matter how small, stand alone. This is precisely what the relationship between the United States and Europe is based on. Working together, we become more interoperable, we can provide training and develop operational capabilities. This in itself increases stability in the global system, distributes responsibilities and cost of maritime security, and makes us all safer. In this interconnected world, where threats know no boundaries, no international lines, the burden of security has to be shared. And so partnerships matter. Here in Europe, our Navy's Sixth Fleet has been a foundational part of European security. In February, I was in Rota, Spain, welcoming the first destroyer of 4 that we will permanently station to provide ballistic missile defense for Europe. This month, we're conducting Baltops. I was just in Karlskrona on one of the American ships, Mount Whitney there. And that promotes mutual understanding and demonstrates the United States' commitment to the security of the Baltic and of Northern Europe. This exercise has happened for 42 years. And this year, it includes 30 ships and participating forces from 14 nations, with Brigadier General Trudsson of the Swedish Navy serving as Deputy Commander of Baltops. One of the great strengths of this exercise is it demonstrates the importance of cooperative relations in the Baltic region. I just had a wonderful lunch at the ambassador's residence talking about the Arctic. The United States looks forward to taking responsibility as chair of the Arctic Council in 2015, where we will also focus on the importance of cooperative relationships. The Arctic has enjoyed a remarkable level of cooperation on a wide range of issues for half a century. Sweden and the Nordic nations have long played the leadership role in this regard. And because of this, today the Arctic is a region bounded by nation states that have, for the most part, demonstrated the ability and commitment to using a common framework and international law to work together. As we approach our chairmanship, we aim to continue to build and strengthen these relationships, which are essential to fostering security and prosperity as this region's position and importance in the world rises. Looking to the east, USS Vella is right now in the Black Sea to enhance maritime cooperation with our Romanian and Bulgarian allies and others in the region. 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines are in Romania now as our Marine Corps Black Sea Rotational Force, a force that has been in the Black Sea now for years and are operating and training with our allies and partners, including preparing for the upcoming Summer Shield exercise. Today, more NATO planes are patrolling the skies over the Baltics, and we've increased our presence in Poland. For 16 years, we've been partnering with our European allies and friends for exercise Sea Breeze in the Black Sea. The exercise is hosted by the military of the Ukraine. Included 16 nations last year, and we're doing it again this year. Since the 1990s, Ukraine has been playing a central role in the maritime security of the Black Sea, and it's an important partner for all of us. We want to support those nations who share in our principles and our ideals, who believe in freedom of navigation, territorial integrity, and the rule of law. Because of this, the United States will continue to support Ukraine through its economic development and its commitment to democracy. We continue to stand firm in our support of Ukrainian sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the ability of the Ukrainian people to choose their own future for themselves, by themselves. Looking south from European shores, African countries are experiencing economic growth and population increases and resource development. But they're also experiencing increasing threats, including extremist organizations, increasing trafficking in persons and narcotics, instability on the shores of the Mediterranean and the Gulf of Guinea. These are shared challenges, not just military ones, but among every nation of Europe and the world. And together, we have to work to address them. We've worked closely with Spain to position our Marine Air Ground Task Force crisis response in Morone, where I stopped first part of my trip this time. These forces, along with the Black Sea Rotational Force that I've already talked about, allow us to respond to emergencies over a very wide geographical area to whatever emergency, whatever crisis comes up, such as happened in South Sudan this January or off the coast of Libya today. In my time as secretary, I have traveled more than 840,000 air miles. I visited 112 individual countries. And I do that for two reasons. One is to meet our sailors and Marines where they're employed, and to thank them for their willingness to do it. But it's also to reinforce the partnerships that we have, to reinforce the relationships. The United States is working in some way with all 112 of those countries I visited. This is my 18th trip to Europe as secretary. On all my travels, what impresses me is the relationship that our sailors and Marines construct with our partners in whatever country they are working with, and the value of working together to confront any of those crises that come across the horizon. Since those Athenian fleets, naval forces have proven themselves to be the most immediate, the most capable, and the most adaptable option, whatever the situation. And whether it's exercising together in the Baltic or operating against pirates in the Gulf of Aden or cooperating in the Pacific to provide disaster relief as we did for Super Typhoon Haiyan, a strong partnership between the U.S. and Sweden and the U.S. and all of Europe makes a difference around the world. Presence matters. So together, maintaining our presence through our people, our platforms, our power, and partnerships, we will defeat any threat. We will meet any challenge, and we will make the most of every opportunity that comes across that maritime horizon for the 21st century. And we will remain, as the United States Navy motto goes, Semper Fortis, forever courageous. And the United States Marine motto, Semper Fidelis, forever faithful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Mabus, for a very interesting presentation. We will now open up for questions, so please raise your hand and there will be a microphone coming to you. Thank you, I see a number already. Go on. Please introduce yourself.
Jesse Fleck from Princeton University. Mr. Secretary, my question is this. President Poroshenko talked about creating a new Budapest Treaty in his inaugural address. What are U.S. interests in such a treaty, and how would we pursue this?
Well, I think our interest is what I've described with the Ukraine, is standing with them, standing as a measure of solidarity on the rule of law, on territorial integrity, on things like that. The mechanism for getting there is going to have to be determined by the Ukrainian people and by Ukrainian friends and neighbors and allies. What that mechanism is, I don't think it's clear yet, but the underlying principles are. And I think that our president, particularly the entire time, but particularly last week when he was in Europe, I pointed those out very, very clearly. Princeton University in Sweden or Princeton University in Princeton, New Jersey?
Princeton University in Princeton, New Jersey.
Where, by the way, we just brought Naval ROTC back
yes, I know,
after a 45-year absence.
Okay, can I just have a small short follow-up on Ukraine? Because the security landscape has changed pretty much lately, and I would like to ask you, how severe is the situation today? What do you say?
Well, we're very concerned about the security situation in Ukraine. And I'm saying almost exactly what our President, our Secretary of State, has stated over and over again. We're very concerned. We're very concerned about the number of Russian troops that are close, about Russian influence inside Ukraine, and the things that we are insisting upon: territorial integrity, rule of law, but also the right of Ukrainians to choose their future in free elections, should be inviolate. And so anything that undermines that concerns us, and the security situation does. And as I said, we're not doing this in reaction, but we have had the Black Sea Rotational Force of Marines in Romania, Bulgaria now for years, and they are there today. We have ships in the Black Sea nearly full time, and we've got the Belagov there today. And some of the other things that I talked about across Europe, that we are expanding our presence.
I raised my hand.
Yes,
I forget.
Jens Pettersson, Mr. Secretary. Platforms and partnerships in a boundaryless world adds up to cooperative engagement capability. Would you please enlighten us something on how CEC can be used in the Baltic and Nordic theater?
Well, I think you're seeing those cooperative engagements already being used. I mean, Baltops is a great example.
The technology.
The technology. Well, one of the things that we are working together on, well, a couple of things that we're working together on. One is cyber, how cyber can be used offensively and defensively, and how do we work together to mitigate some of those things. The second thing is energy, is the technology on that. Sweden has taken a leading role in alternative energy, and we need a homegrown source of power that is not susceptible to either price spikes or interruption, because then you're not as vulnerable to the to the use of energy as a weapon. A third thing is, and this is a military speak, but marine domain awareness, maritime domain awareness. What ships are where? Why are they there? What's their purpose? And just for awareness of what's going on in the Baltic or in any other part of the world. But that technology, and making sure that we share that information, that's not used uniquely for whatever country is gathering it. So I think those are three technology areas that we have to work together on. We need to work together on. And I mean, there are purely military aspects. I said we use the same engines in our F-18s and the Swedish Gripen. We have interoperable platforms, and we have to make sure that small things like our systems will talk to each other, or that we can talk to each other during a time of. We have to exercise that in peacetime, so that in times of any sort of crisis, that the foundations are already there. Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you. You already mentioned all the bases, so I didn't need to have it brought with me. All the U.S. bases surrounded and closing all the harbors and narrow sound and things. So my question to you is, First, what would your Pentagon react if Russia put a base so close to your country as you have done surrounding the whole Russia continent? That's one of my burning questions. What would you think would happen if something like in Ukraine, the Russians went into Mexico and started negotiating with it? And the third, do you consider this horrifying memories of 27 million killed during the Second World War? We have recently celebrated the 9th May. What kind of feeling, that's my third, what kind of feeling do you think Russia might have if you look at this US bases surrounding and the fleet in the whole Pacific? Do you ever consider a coming war out of fear for your intruding, I say intruding, and I mean it, and I have basis for it, into Ukraine? Thank you.
Short answer to your question, the last one is no. I don't consider it that. But I appreciate your globe. In fact, we passed that out to show where we are. And we are there as a Navy to protect freedom of navigation, freedom of the seas for everyone, all those engaged in peaceful commerce. And we're the first Navy in history that's ever done that. And you can make a very good argument, and I will, that the world economy is doing as well as it is because the United States Navy has done that. Because we have kept those those sea lines of communication open for everyone. And we will always stand with people and countries who are seeking freedom and democracy. And we will continue to do that.
You didn't answer my question. So what about Libya?
Sorry.
What about Libya? Are they free?
No.
Next question. We have one more minute, and I would like to ask you, Mr. Secretary, because you mentioned about the Arctic share in 2015. The US Navy released an updated Arctic roadmap in February. And I would like to ask you, why is the Arctic region so important for the US? And what are the expectations and the main challenges? If you could elaborate a little bit on that.
It is one of the areas that we consider strategic and great importance. The Arctic has been, as the Arctic changes, as we're looking at a diminishing ice cap, an ice-free Arctic perhaps in the summer, in the not-too-distant future, our responsibilities increase because of transportation through the Arctic. Now commercial ships are doing it. Tourist liners are going through the Arctic. So our responsibilities in terms of search and rescue, in terms of navigation, those sorts of things are increasing. And as navigation increases, as exploration for Arctic resources increases, the potential for friction increases. And one of the things that we're trying to do through what the Navy is doing, but also through the Arctic Council, is to keep that level of friction down or set up mechanisms to adequately deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I see the signs that we need to wind up here, and I would like to thank you so much for taking the time and see us. I would like to give you just a small gift as a token of our appreciation. It's coming from the Royal Gift Shop. It's a pen.